Once upon a time, in a very small house, there lived a little girl who felt like a tiny vessel at sea. In this house, in order to stay safe, she knew she couldn't stand up or change her position for fear of rocking the boat and falling. To stay calm, she learned to breathe in to expand on the inside, and out to make larger the space outside herself. Only then did she feel grounded and in some way capable of taking care of herself. She was a good breather. Her body and breath were friends. And so was her imaginary friend Monty the dragon. One day, while they were out exploring the beach together, he said something peculiar. Did you know that the first step forward in walking begins from the top of your head? Isn't that strange? I bet you didn't know that. Walking seemed to her a movement initiated by the feet, thought the little girl. She was both surprised and intrigued to learn otherwise. Yes, Monty continued, learning the truth of that requires practice. I'm going to ask you to make sure you have the opportunity to experience this fact. No hocus pocus going on here. It's important to know that. And that's how the lessons began. Monty, my teacher, would start by asking me to simply go to the other side of the room and turn my back to the wall and just stand there in stillness and breathe. After a while, he'd ask me to take a step forward and notice where the impetus to move began. As you know, I replied my foot, thinking him rather odd for asking. You see, he was trying to show me how to move with integrity, to offer me a new understanding of how I moved in order to relieve the stress and tension which affected my walking. I had learned habitual ways of moving, and he could free me from those patterns through this exercise. Now that I was at the wall, had taken my first step, answered the obvious incorrectly to his question, where does the movement to first step out begin? I had to start again and reconsider. I wanted to please him by being smart and solve this mystery. But I had no idea what the right answer to his question was. He instructed me to take another step and just notice how my foot was like a wheel that I could roll my weight onto, beginning from the heel through to the arch, then onto the ball, and then release off the toes, which I thought was an interesting way to recognize the use of my foot. I just walked around for a while, sensing the shift of weight from heel along the foot to the toes, one foot at a time. I could say a lot about what I experienced, but I want you to discover that on your own when you try this for yourself. Then he asked me to notice what was happening with my knee as I took a step. As I felt my body pitch forward from the top of my head, my knee released, the foot kicked out, the heel made contact with the floor with my body weight transferring through the toes, and I pushed off effortlessly. I noted with surprise just how little work it took when I paid attention to where the first impulse originated. Once I discovered this tiny, subtle movement at the top of the head, the body naturally fell into momentum and a gentle lift swept energetically up the spine. I repeated the same sequence on the other foot. It was a delicious sense of freedom. I could feel the full weight of my upper body over my hip and down the leg, into the foot and onto the floorboards. There was a moment when the weight being transferred from the foot to the floorboards. There was a moment when the weight being transferred from the foot to foot was experienced across the pelvis. And I noticed a slight clenching of the muscles in the buttock and let go that allowed the hips to swing naturally from side to side. Images of a woman bearing a container of water on her head, hips swaying, came to mind. For the first time I could remember, walking seemed so easy. Everything seemed perfect and painless, except for a small area of tension at the base of my spine. I followed it down to my tailbone. It was then I realized that I was holding there. Without trying to figure out why and getting in my own way, I decided to try and just let it go. It didn't work. I couldn't just will it to happen. So now, let's fast forward for a few years in the future when I worked as a personal trainer. I'd often take clients outdoors on short walks to examine more closely what they were doing that caused them so much discomfort in their exercise programs. I always began with a simple act of walking together, knowing from my earlier years as a dancer the art of walking to be the source of great information about conditioned patterns in the body. It was here that so much was revealed and could be discussed, discovered, and shifted with practice for healthier results. It was later in these daily encounters with clients that the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. One day while out with an old friend and client, a new image came to mind that solved the tension of the tail. It was primal and proved to be the perfect solution to my own recurring problem of back pain. We began our walk surrounded by magnificent trees and the cool, salty air on a sandy beach across from her home, when, from my imagination, Monty the dinosaur unexpectedly made a cameo appearance from the past, munching on leaves and turning its great head as if to say, "Pay attention. I'm going to show you the answer." I watched, enjoying the wildness of the scenario, the enormous size and elegance of his weight as he began to turn away, moving his great head, shoulders, hips, now lifting a leathery kneecap, dropping it with a crash, a powdery fly of dust and foliage beneath each footfall. He continued to forage, his spine like a highway weaving from side to side, dragging and sweeping a great scaly tail behind that brushed and cleared a path. The ease with which he wandered away was mesmerizing. It was then that I saw the solution. From that day onward, I encouraged all clients to envision the dinosaur, specifically to focus on its tail, sense its weight, to emulate that. So it came the final step to simply drop their tail and walk like a dragon, fearless and free from pain. The end. And much love, fellow dragons.